Boris Johnson claims to be a libertarian, and when the COVID restrictions were first mooted, I asked him, I said, are you really going to push all this through, and how long is it going to last? He said, you can trust me, I'm a libertarian. Well, he seems to be burying the libertarian bit at the moment. I voted against compulsory vaccinations for NHS staff and for COVID passports. My worry is that it leads us in the direction of identity cards and formal identification of people for everything that they want to do. This is the direction in which it goes. And strangely, the Tories are also proposing compulsory identification when you go to vote. And I think it leads us all back in that direction of a massive data bank of all of our information. And in the case of NHS staff being required to have vaccination, there are 65,000 staff not vaccinated but do undertake tests and do work within the NHS. I don't think it's a good idea to lose that number of staff now when the NHS is under such huge pressure, not just from COVID, but from all the other problems people have, particularly during the winter time. And also, I think there's something doesn't fit right with the idea that you have to be compulsorily vaccinated. Other countries are doing it. There is a lot of opposition to it. So what do? You create martyrs. Austria has gone down the direction of compulsory vaccination for the entire population, as has Greece.
Starting in January, unvaccinated people over 60 will pay a monthly fine of $120.
We start with some breaking news out of Austria. Chancellor Alexander Schallenberg has announced it will become the first European country to make COVID-19 vaccines mandatory starting February.
Do you really want to be fining people and imprisoning people because they have concerns about a vaccine? I personally don't share those concerns, but that isn't the point. The point is they have them. You achieve far more by persuasion and inclusion than you do by compulsion.
To reiterate, WHO's position in general is that mandatory vaccination is not the best means to achieve the highest vaccine uptake.
If we go into compulsion on everything, then you end up with a overpowerful government. Add the police bill and the Borders and Nationality bill to the agenda of what the government is doing, and you begin to see a very controlling central state on people's lives. That worries me. That doesn't make me anti-vax. It doesn't make me somebody that is a naysayer on this issue. I recognise the dangers of ill health and the dangers that COVID and other diseases bring, but we have to take a decision on the basis of civil liberties as well, and that's what I did. I'm not anti-vax, and I think the idea that everything is a binary choice is really not a very sensible way of addressing this issue. Social media can be a very poisonous place. That is exactly what's happening here. Whilst social media has its place and has its uses in disseminating information, I do urge people to just remember that there is a rational discussion and debate to be had here. You don't need to condemn everybody. And when I was at a pro-NHS workers rally recently organised by Unite the Union, we were then heckled and shouted at by anti-vaxxers. I pointed out to them very politely that they were actually shouting down NHS workers who they themselves would be needing if ever they had another illness or an accident. Let's have some respect for those people that give their lives to our National Health Service. Are you vaccinated? Are you not vaccinated? Are you doing this? Are you not doing that? No, you need to unite people around what core beliefs there are of the right to access to good health, the right for our children to get good education, the right for us to be able to live safely in our streets, and the right to be supported when you're in need in society. If we take that away, we end up with a deeply divided, unpleasant and greedy society. The COVID crisis has exposed the profits being made by Big Pharma. The vaccines that have been developed have all been developed because of public funding and public participation in them. The patents, however, are all owned by pharmaceutical companies who have refused to release them, refused to share them, and refused to allow other countries to develop the vaccines. I think it is time to challenge the power of Big Pharma, which is why I was specific in the last general election and including in the Labour manifesto a commitment to develop our own generic drug manufacturing facility to be owned by the public, which would then provide our NHS with drugs at cost rather than the massive profits that are being made by Big Pharma. Medical research ought to be based on the medical needs of the people rather than the potential for huge profits of Big Pharma. At the moment, people in Britain can now get a third vaccination if they want one. There are some countries in the world that have yet to get their first vaccines of any sort. Their governments cannot afford to buy it or import it, and the World Health Organization does not have sufficient supplies provided by the pharmaceutical companies. We have to end this iron grip of Big Pharma on medical supplies around the world. The South African government fought a doughty fight in order to get antiretroviral drugs at generic prices to help them through the pandemic they were suffering from AIDS. They eventually won it. It is possible to win battles against Big Pharma. But if we continue with the idea of trade arrangements which empower companies to take governments to court for political decisions they make, then actually what we're doing is giving up on national government and saying the world is actually run by a number of global corporations. Well, it's time to challenge that. Part of our lives and our fight back is access to good media. Therefore, support Double Down News. Join the future of journalism. Join Double Down News on Patreon. Hear that good voice that DDN brings us.